Welcome to stage 13 of the Giro d'Italia. 13, unlucky for some, and it might well be just that way at the end of today. 157 kilometres in total, but ending with a final kilometre that will put the frighteners on many of the fast men. See that cloud? It may well burst. Humidity 75%, but a 50-50 chance that we will have rain today, which I guess, if you take different parts of today's course and divide them up into little sections, then every other one may well be blessed or cursed with the wet stuff, depending on your point of view. 23 Celsius is the temperature. Feels very, very sticky at the finish line. Heading almost due north today from Fozzano, cutting through Trentino and heading northwards, as you can see. Destination Rivarolo. And this is the graph of what we're dealing with. Some peaks and troughs today, and some of them more focused than perhaps you might have thought. The Saltana de Rivara climb only categorized 4, however it is a stiff test indeed. Cadel Evans no longer in pink, but still a fantastic performance by him in the time trial, acknowledged as such by everybody, including Rigoberto Urán, who is keen to say it's not all over yet, far from it. Some big climbing to come today, though, is of course about the quick men, and the big question, can anyone beat Buani? And it is a feature of today that there is plenty of transition. They've just taken one turn right now. If the chase truly is on, at 2 minutes and 24 is the gap at the moment, they'll be racing for those kind of corners, Dan. And the climbs today, we went over the course, and it was a really mean test on more than one occasion.
Yeah, they've certainly got some elevation change today, a little bit more than some of the other sprint days that we've had already. Nothing that's really going to, I think, affect anything in terms of the general classification today. There is our course profile. You can see we have actually got a King of the Mountains, a classified climb there, Salita di Rivara. It's only a 4th category. It's fairly short and steep, but as I said, a few twists and turns, narrow roads as well, and it's preceded by another couple of or unclassified climbs as well. We then get some more small roads coming in here towards the finish, and then they'll finish off with a lap of 22 kilometres, which is fairly simple without too many technical difficulties until that final K, and we'll go through that with you a little bit later on. But multiple corners for the riders to negotiate over the last 1,000 metres today. Yeah,
it might well have been regarded as a transition stage, but it's more than a test, and certainly will be for the quick men out there. Can anyone beat Buani? That's the big question of the day, and I suspect that with it being such a technical run-in, some teams may well have a hope that this might well just go their way.
Well, you can always hope, can't you? He's been the fastest sprinter in the race since Marcel Kittel abandoned or didn't start in Bari on stage 4. 3 wins, of course, already to his name. He's sitting pretty as well in that points competition, and we heard in the interview at the start with Nizzolo, who sits second in the red jersey, that Buani's been climbing pretty well. I was wondering whether he was going to manage to get through this final week in the mountains, but it sounds like he's riding strongly, not just on the sprints, but also over the climbs as well. He's maturing. He's still a very young rider, Carlton, of course, Nacer Buani. He's taken his first Grand Tour stage win here, and then 2 straight afterwards, and that's left the bulk of the responsibility of chasing today on the shoulders of the team in blue there, FDJ, although we can see Stam Schneider from Giant Shimano is on the front, so Giant Shimano also helping along. We can't see anything at the moment from Trek Factory Racing or from Cannondale. They're taking a back seat. Their sprinters, of course, being Nizzolo and also Elia Viviani. But the other interesting thing today, Carlton, is the fact that we've got a sprint, an intermediate sprint, which of course carries points for that red jersey competition, with only 13 Ks to go. So that's going to be a big effort for the riders to make very, very close to the finish today.
It certainly is. Just on that pinch point note that we were talking about just a few moments ago, you saw the compression that happened on the peloton, and it really did stretch them out, going from 4 wide to single file in very quick order. Time to check on the day and just how it is shaping up, and exactly what the challenges are going to be thrown up today. And as Dan was talking about just a few moments ago, 13 kilometres out comes this intermediate sprint, so those looking for sprint points will be battling for that, and it means that The lead-in, essentially, or the lead-out trains, will be in formation pretty early, possibly an awful lot earlier than you might have thought. Just ahead of that last 22 kilometres where we will do a loop out into the countryside. We'll take a peak, which is where the sprint is, and then come back home for the last 13k. So 22 kilometres out is where really that business end of the day begins. However, just ahead of that, there's a series of climbs, including the categorised climb. It comes within a whole group of hillocks, are we allowed to call them? I think so. Probably for the 22 kilometres approaching that. So from about 40 out, maybe even a little bit further than that, it's really going to be extremely busy.
It will be. There'll be plenty of people, teams as usual, trying to get their rides towards the front. It could make it dangerous, especially, Carlton, of course, if it rains again, which it looks like it may well do. It's been sunny all morning. You can see that the rides are in the sunshine at the moment, but here at the finish line, the black clouds are still looming. It's not quite as bad in the distance as it was an hour or so ago, but once again, the weather forecast is saying that there's a large threat of rain as they come in towards this finishing circuit. That will play a large part in the outcome of this race, in my mind, because, of course, the GC riders then and their teams even become more nervous. The sprinters' teams again becoming nervous, and all of that just goes to make a peloton which is much more likely to crash through the corners, etc. We saw it, of course, in Bari. It's not as slippery on the road surfaces up here in the north of Italy, but all the same, it will change the outcome of the race.
You can see how strung out they are coming through on some of the straightest roads here. Thankfully, I guess the one blessing is that they are... well, there's no wind today, so even if they are strung out, at least they don't have too much trouble staying together. We are heading towards clouds, and we have such a dirty big black one above us at the moment. We feel certain it is going to burst, and those poor children there along the way, well, maybe they'll avoid it, but the local kids here have been handing their pink t-shirts today. They went into frenzy when the big box was opened. It was a joy to see. They weren't fighting over it, they all queued up beautifully, but the squeals of delight when they got their pink Giro jerseys. This is a race that's promoted extraordinarily well, Dan, and it's amazingly well supported. The amount of engagement with the course and the Giro is phenomenal. The sort of pink stuff that you see hanging all over the place, whether it's bicycles that have been sprayed up or balloons just blown up, is quite remarkable considering the length of every single day.
Yeah, it really draws communities together, doesn't it? We went driving along the course this morning and plenty of people had already put their pink bikes up, one of which was on a crane. Also loads of balloons on the course and all other sorts of roadside decorations which will greet these riders as they come through later on, but I'm sure they've seen plenty of it already. There's Team Sky, one team which is still to take a stage win in this race. Things haven't really gone their own way so far. Closest they came, of course, was in Dublin on stage 3, where Ben Swift was pretty unfortunate to come across an extremely fast and strong Marcel Kittel, who just pipped him towards the line. Second place for Swift on the day. He crashed, though, of course, in Bari, and it seems to be affecting him since. But the number of sprinters, Carlton, in this race has been severely reduced over the last week. Of course, Kittel, the first and the most major name to exit the race, not starting on stage 4. We also had 2 go out the other day, outside the time limit. Apollonio of AG2R and Ruffoni of the Bardiani Lime Green team. Michael Matthews, of course, who won a stage up to Monte Cassini and was third the last stage which Buani won. He also exiting the race, not starting 2 days ago, so it's going to be a slightly more filtered sprint in terms of the number of teams and riders up there towards the finish, which hopefully, if it does rain, will make it slightly safer than it has been.
Daniele Colli is likely to be the man for Neri Sotoli. Kiki, of course, is out. Never finished a Grand Tour. Just can't help himself but climb off the bike, it seems. I'm not really sure what his issue was, but yeah, considering that Colli crashed on stages 10 and 11, he's had the gumption to stick with it and will be the man in the bright yellow who hopes to stop Buani today. Sky, they have got Elfval Bosenhagen, and he's quite a formidable force when it comes to technical stuff. He can go downhill pretty well, and maybe he will set Ben Swift up for the run for home, and it really is a nasty one. We'll just to sort of give you a foretaste, a bouche à mousse, as the French might say. There's just a whole series of corners that have been thrown into the last kilometre underneath the Flamme Rouge, and in fact the last one comes, you're only released from it with 220 to go, and it's a very, very focused right-hander and I wouldn't like to even jog round it, frankly.
No, and a very slight rise from that last right-hander all the way up here towards the finish line. It will be interesting. They will get to, of course, see the finish when they come through here, where they'll do another lap. And the only bit that they do twice, in fact, is the last 900 metres of the stage itself. But that does mean, of course, that they do get to see the running over the last 900 metres, and all the sprinters and their teams will get to see what they have to deal with at the final time through, when they'll be sprinting for the victory. They haven't been let off the leash much today, Carlton. These front group of 6, maximum time gap, well, not even over 3 minutes. FDJ very much wanted to make things as easy as possible on themselves today, along with Giant Shimano controlling the group behind. The group of 6, you can't really afford on a short flat day to let go too far up the road, but yeah, I thought they might give them 4 minutes or so. 3 minutes the maximum gap, and it's hovering, as you can see, around about 2.5 minutes at the moment. It has been for the last 20 or so kilometres.
They made a turn. They're heading, if you kind of smoothed out the road today, a few little diversions, but essentially they are heading north, or we are heading north. They're coming towards our commentary position at the finish line as we speak. Some very distinct and defined shadows, as you can see, because they're in bright sunshine at the moment, but it's not nice ahead of them, and let's just hope that everyone stays safe on what is bound to be a difficult day for the Quickman. Let's just get you up to speed with what happens to Tobias Ludvigsson yesterday, just in case you're joining us late. Tobias is okay. Remember, he took that high-speed altercation with the Armco, flew, landed badly, we thought, or feared. Turns out he's okay.
Yeah, thankfully. I mean, it could have been so much worse, couldn't it? He did really go and land a long way from where that Armco barrier was, because it was a bit of a hillside where he went over it there. But thankfully, nothing broken, which is incredible. I was really fearful, actually, that he would have broken something pretty serious when I saw him on the floor there laying down for quite some time. But he's okay. Of course, he's not in the race anymore. So Giant Shimano now down to 7 riders. He and Kittel, the riders who have abandoned the race. But that's not stopped them from riding on the front today with Stam Schneider. They're still hoping to take another stage victory. Geksha came close the other day when Rogers took a fine solo victory. Second place on the day, the winner of the remainder of the bunch that came in towards the finish, ahead of a stage winner from last year, which is the Bardiani rider, whose name I've completely forgotten. But also going back to yesterday's time trial, I gave, I think I did Cadel Evans a little bit of a disservice throughout the time trial. He was, I thought, on a really, really bad day. When I saw he was 50 seconds down at the first time check on Pozzovivo, I just thought, oh my goodness, how much time is he going to lose today? And then, of course, he had a big, big deficit to Rigoberto Urán when he came through the second time check. But he really pulled things back. I mean, we saw him pushing the limits on the descents and going as hard as he could, of course, on the climbs in towards the finish, and really made up some time. In fact, over the last third of the race, from that second time check to the finish, he was the second best rider. He lost still 35 seconds to Urán, but he was ahead of the likes of Brambilla, Ulissi, Maikya, and all of his other GC rivals here in the race. So actually he came out of it pretty good. Third place is very respectable, of course, for anybody in a time trial. I think also for Evans, he just came across an absolutely incredible Rigoberto Urán. I mean, who could have imagined that he'd win the time trial by that much and also go into the pink jersey?
Rigoberto Urán was a very, very good time trialist when he was a young man. In fact, I've got a feeling he was actually youth time trial champion in Colombia. And so he's rediscovering, if you like, that part of his armoury. And did an amazing job yesterday. Cadel Evans may well have lost time to Rigoberto Urán, but he gained time on all of his other GC rivals. And as a result, he starts today still in an extraordinarily healthy position. Now, I think if you'd actually asked him or offered him to be in the position he is now at this stage, with the mountains to come, trailing Urán, he would definitely have taken it ahead of the start of this race. 37 seconds is the gap between the pair, but an awful lot of mountain work still to be done. And I think, Dan, the thing about Cadel Evans is he's amazingly consistent in most departments. Urán is the man who has to basically shine brighter than perhaps he has done so far this season. Did so in the time trial, but he's got to repeat the feat when it comes to the high ground. We know Cadel will go well, and so it's still battle on.
after when they came to Italy. Pretty much every day over that first week of racing they had to deal with some kind of rain, and it means that not only do you get cold, but there's also more muck comes off the road, which can lead to illness as well. So not a surprise to see a couple of the riders ill, but we certainly haven't seen the best of Nairo Quintana so far. He's on antibiotics, he told us that yesterday in an interview. He'll hope to, of course, recover for the final week, which is the week which suits him most anyway. It's going to be a long shot, though, you have to say, for him to try and take back the time deficit that he has on his compatriot Rigoberto Urán. He sits 3 minutes and 29 seconds behind him in the overall classification. Now, he has moved up to 6th overall, but he would want to be really a little bit higher at the moment, Quintana. He came into this race as favourite with the bookies and as favourite, given his performances over the last year or two, to win this race overall, given the parkour. So I think, if we look at yesterday, the most pleased, of course, will be Rigoberto Urán. Evans will be slightly disappointed to have lost the jersey, but I think satisfied with his performance on the day. Mike here, I think, will be over the moon. 4th place on the day for him. I reckon that's the best time trial he's ever pulled out since he turned professional. He's obviously on fantastic form, and the race or the part of the race which suits him most is still to come. If we look a little bit further down the order, Kelderman 7th on the day yesterday, conceding 2 minutes and 3 seconds to Urán. I think he hoped for slightly better than that. Still a great performance for a very young rider from the Netherlands, of course, Team Belkin. But he was hoping to take time on all of his GC rivals yesterday, because it's likely that he might slip a little bit of time on each of the very, very steep mountain stages. Pozzovivo, 9th on the stage, pretty good time trial for him. He's not a time trial specialist by any means. Quintana 13th, Aru, the young rider from Astana, 16th on the day, conceding almost 3 minutes to Urán. And then a little bit further down the order, rider Hesjedal, 20th on the day, 3 minutes and 22 seconds. That now leaves him in 16th place overall. But of course he lost all that time on the opening team time trial. 7 minutes almost his deficit in the overall classification. So we are now, of course, starting to see a very big hierarchy taking place in the first 10 riders.
It's a very moneyed part of the world, this. Looking at Pavarola, there's been a lot of money here for a very, very long time, and the jealousy levels that Dan Lloyd displays when we ride around the course or drive around the course at the beginning of the day is something to behold in itself. Generations kind of locked in, I guess, to the property. It's very, very difficult traditionally to actually buy something grand in Italy, because nobody really wants to be responsible for the part of the line of generations that let the family homeland go. So you see some spectacular buildings. We saw some along the way today, Dan, that really look down at heel, but they really are not for sale. But you wonder who's going to find the money to actually renovate them. They are beautiful, though, aren't they, nonetheless?
Yeah, shame in some ways to see them having been left and nowhere near their former glory, but certainly there's some amazing countryside around here. In fact, I've loved the last week, the majority of it. I really like these rolling hills, and the backdrop today, whilst it's slightly hidden by some black clouds, and actually I just saw a clap of I just saw some lightning. You can't see a clap
flash.
Of thunder, can you? Saw a flash of lightning in the distance there. We've got some big climbs over there, and of course that's where we're going to be going towards tomorrow. The years, and of course Andre Greipel, the other German sprinter who rides for Lotto Bella. So none of them are here. Kittel was, of course, here at the start and got the better of Buhani on both occasions that he sprinted. So he still needs to take that next step up to be kind of considered as a part of that group. He's done exceedingly well. He's been consistent here, but it's not second-rate sprinters by any means, but just a slightly lower ebb than what we're going to see at the Tour de France this summer. Still yet to be decided, I think, whether Buhani is going to be a part of his team for the Tour. We've speculated about it over a number of stages, but even on the way into this race, he was saying that it wasn't certain he would re-sign with FDJ, his current team, at the end of the season. His contract's up for renewal. They've got another sprinter in the form of Arnaud Demar, and if it does look like Buhani is going to move on, then it might well be his team leave him at home for the Tour de France this summer. Yes,
they don't want to advertise him, or at least do the favour for another team, I guess. The other point, Dan, that we were talking about yesterday, just while we stay with the sprinters, the head-to-head, Marcel Kittel and the other prime sprinters, Greipel and Mark Cavendish. Kittel really is looking absolutely in at another level, at least for the time being. Andre Greipel, of course, has had his injury, and Mark Cavendish has had his illness. But if you just go back through the historical head-to-heads, it's an amazing series of statistics that Kittel holds.
It is. I think it was Killian Kelly, Irish Peloton, on Twitter yesterday that said that I think he said that they sprinted together head-to-head on 13 occasions. I haven't checked these facts myself, but Killian's pretty reliable normally. Maybe go to another shot. 13 occasions that they've sprinted together, and on 11 of those occasions Kittel has beaten Mark Cavendish, and the 2 times that it was the other way around were at the Stir Electro Tour, and nothing against that tour, but it's of course not quite as closely thought or prestigious of course as the Grand Tour. So when it comes to an actual Grand Tour stage, a major race let's say, Cav's apparently never beaten Kittel in a head-to-head sprint, i.e. when they've both been remaining in the peloton. Of course Mark Cavendish did take a win at Tour de France last year ahead of Sagan, but that was in the crosswind day. So, I mean, you know, we always think of Mark Cavendish as the best sprinter of recent times, and I don't think there's any doubt about that. He's really dominated things, but whether or not he's going to be able to get the better of Kittel this summer at Tour de France in a head-to-head sprint remains to be seen. I know Cav is extremely determined. He was upset to be beaten, especially on the Champs-Élysées last year, but again, Cav saying that he put out 1500 watts when he came towards the line. He says, normally if I do that amount of power and I've got a good lead out from my team, then I'm 2 or 3 lengths ahead of everybody else. Kittel still managed to come around him, even though you don't get much of a slipstream behind Cav because he's so low. So again, it's going to be extremely interesting this summer to see the 2 of them and 3 of them battle it out head to head, and any other sprinters that might be able to come up towards their level.
Yeah, it'd be amazing. One thing in Cav's defence when it came to that Champs-Élysées sprint, by the way, was the dirty great big pothole he found himself in and got completely airborne right at the very last. So the last few pedal strokes were essentially in mid-air, which didn't help his cause. Gassino Torinese and yet another Domo, which seemed to dominate the centre of town back from the Renaissance period, of course, when all this stuff was thrown up. 78.5 kilometres to go, and that seems like still a long way. However, expect the pace to pick up slowly but surely as we approach the lumpy part of today's course through Valpiana, where we stayed yesterday, and you can see how important it is today.
Stam Schneider, the Dutch rider from Giant Shimano, they're just taking out one of those pink. That is, basically the riders at the start of the race get 21 of these cards, even for the individual and team time trials, giving the profile of the stage and where the King of the Mountains come, etc, etc. So some of them will wrap it around their stem, some of them will just mark the key points in terms of numbers of kilometres on their stem, and others will keep that profile card in their back pocket so that they can just have a quick look at it every now and again and see what's coming up. You can see what's coming up for them in terms of weather. That shot just a moment ago in the distance there, you could see the black clouds looming. It has just about held off here at the finish line, to my surprise so far. In fact, it almost feels like those black clouds have passed slightly around here at the finish and not quite dumped their rain on us, so they'll be keeping their fingers crossed in the peloton that they have a dry day today. A couple of questions coming in, Carlton, on Twitter. One from Bob Armfield saying, pedalling style question, is there an advantage to pedalling with knees slightly inward like most riders that we see here on the television, or is it just style? There is an aerodynamic advantage to at least having straight legs, as in not having them out. If you have your knees slightly out and away from the top tube there, then you are almost kind of scooping air in. It gives you a larger frontal area. It doesn't make too much difference on the climbs, but of course on the flats here, that will make a difference. You might not be able to feel it, but it's there, and it will mean that you use more energy up each day. More and more riders trying to get as aerodynamic as possible these days, both in terms of clothing, helmets, shoes, and also their body position, which is the biggest factor, of course, in aerodynamics. So that's why you see majority of riders keeping their knees in. Even if they don't do it naturally, they'll try and make sure they keep their knees in, especially in time trials. But some riders, they just naturally have their knees out, but not many of the pros. Julie out Team Sky. Of course, in the last stage, which Buani won, Team Sky tried to split things up, that uncategorised climb coming in towards the finish. The difference, though, of course, then was it was only around about 5k's to go, maybe 7k's to go from the top towards the finish line. It did string the peloton out. We saw a number of riders in difficulty at the back, but although Buhani did slip down the group a bit, he did, of course, manage to come back through some sterling work from Sebastian Chavanel, amongst others in the team, and took his 3rd stage victory. Today, well, those climbs coming much further from the finish. I doubt that they're going to put too much effort into trying to split things up. As you can see, they're just on a flat part of the stage at the moment. Not long until they get to those lumps and bumps and that official 4th category GPM at the Salita di Rivara there. But, yeah, I can't see Team Sky really doing too much on the climbs. They'll put everything in towards the finish again. They've got Edvard Bosenhagen and CJ Sutton, both good sprinters in their own right as well, and the very experienced Bernie Eisel, who in his first few years as a pro was also a bunch sprinter. He's turned into more of kind of a classics rider and strongman and domestique, but you know, he was crucial to Cav's victories back in the day, and he's got a lot of experience, and I'm sure he's got some ideas on how things might be challenged towards the end today.
Sergio Romita, the Italian champion, displaying the tricolour in fine style. Nice to see Luca Paolini. He's a man that might well just be able to wrestle with it. He's a very compact and very strong man. He's not the fastest of even the sprinters that we have here, but he can go quickly, and you might see his beard up towards the front. He stepped out of the Tour of Turkey early to come here, of course, in a supporting role, but things didn't work out as for Rodriguez, who arrived with broken ribs, picked up another one and a broken finger along the way, and was first of our big favourites to actually go out of this race, unfortunately. Through the feed zone they come, and yeah, your guess is as good as mine as to what the likes of Romero is actually picking up here, but it's there is a little selection. I know a lot of you are absolutely fascinated as to what they might have, but it's all down to rider preference, and as we've said many times before, some of the things that they have in those knapsacks are quite unexpected, but yes, in fact, one of the I'm just trying to remember who it is. One of the, whoa dear, get back to that in a moment. Yeah, and that looks like it hurt, but stung rather than anything else. He's clearly not carrying too much of an injury, but that's not nice.
Oh, it's his rain jacket.
Yeah, there it is. He was fighting with his rain jacket. It got straight into the back, wrapped around the brakes and brought him down. We've seen that as a potential problem, and now it's a real one.
Yeah, his mechanic seems to be in much more of a rush to get him back on the bike than he himself is at the moment. It did seem to knock the wind out of him slightly, Gusev, but I'm sure he'll continue. You can see, oh, his handlebars are...
everything's all over the place.
Seat's not straight either. Straight. The mechanics seem to be trying to... Yeah, you can see his handlebars are pointed to the right whilst his wheel is pointing straight on. Oh, let's get a replay here.
Let's have a look. Now, this is one arm going in, and then watch the other arm, and... whoa, lock up. Down he went. Pirouette styly. And we've seen that as a potential threat before, Dan. We've talked it up because we've seen it before, but now, unfortunately, it has happened.
Yeah, always a risk of that happening. Surprising, actually, to see him not wrap the sleeves around the rain jacket, which is what most riders will do. He's an experienced guy, Gusev. You can see that he's been professional for a long time. Just not concentrating there, and the wind blowing that sleeve into the back wheel, which locked up, and he sort of goes speedway style. Didn't manage to hold it up, so he'll be slightly hurt. No broken bones, I'm sure, but a little bit of skin off, and of course his skin suit's ripped as well. Won't be too hard for him to get back to the peloton. He'll slipstream behind the team car there, come back to the convoy, and I'm sure he'll be back before we get to this slightly more difficult section of the course.
Yeah, we're just coming through incidentally Volpiano, where we stayed last night. It was a very inauspicious looking hotel, and when we pulled up, the sides of our mouths were turning down ever so slightly. Then we went to the restaurant, and likewise it didn't look great, but as is always the case in Italy, and the Colombian gang are letting rip. Let's have a listen. Well, you know why? They are the leaders of this Giro d'Italia. They're going through the feed zone. Yes, we had a lovely meal last night, just to finish off that point, and it's the reason why a lot of teams historically never bothered bringing a chef along to Italy, because the food is just so spectacular. Even in the least promising looking restaurants, you can eat extraordinarily well, and we did last night. It was lovely. 66.7, they really made their voices heard. Apparently, congratulations from the president of Colombia, winged their way to Oran yesterday. I think they might have even had a phone conversation. How great is that?
Yeah, I saw that last night on Twitter, actually, that he sent his congratulations to Rigoberto Urán, and I'm not surprised. Colombia is, of course, a country which loves the sport of cycling. They've had plenty of champions in the past, do spectacular things over in Europe, but so they had a little bit of a dip, didn't they, Carlton? And they've come back in the last few years with Rigoberto Urán, with Quintana, with many other riders, even Chavez, the young rider who rides for Orica Greenedge, took a win in the Tour of California the other day. They've got this massive strength in depth, and of course they're leading the mountains competition here as well with Julian Arredondo, so plenty for them to shout about, but maybe not quite that now.
Yeah, if you don't mind. Oh, flash again. It's not flash photography at the line. We're just keeping in touch with the storm report at the finish. We are heading for the mountains, which says it's a rock base, which is the reason why the dead have to stay above ground and you have tombs instead of cemeteries. Otherwise you need a jackhammer to put people below the earth. It is very much the mountains and the granite men, the hard guys. They come to the fore. Not that the sprinters are softies, and you better not say that of Nasser Bouhanni, who's a kickboxer in his spare time. And that sort of mentality that he brings to a sprint serves him very well indeed. He seems to be able to find gaps when none exist, so he is our out-and-out favourite today. The hope is, amongst the other fast men, that the boys in blue, and of course the man who's wearing that red skin suit who rides for Francis de Jure, just get it wrong at the end of the day, but it's a tall order, I guess. Time as well for a tall man to put away the rain jacket. You can see that Cannondale are also with an interest today, and Viviani, it's about last chance for saloon for him, because the quick men are going to be tested just in terms of making it home when we get into the mountains, and you just wonder how many of them will still have all their firepower in place when we get to Trieste for the final day. It may well be that some of them get timed out. That is a big danger. We've already lost riders to being dematriculated. Believe it. Hailstones it was, unless somebody emptied a Fizzante chiller. I think it was the former. Why on earth would you mess around with that? So just watch out for yourselves, and maybe hold on to your helmets if it does start pelting, because some of those looked getting on for marble size at least. 48.3 kilometres to go, and this is the approach to the lumpy stuff that we're dealing with today. And the climb, let me tell you, Max is at 12%, not 30, but 12%, nonetheless, still a test. It only goes over 1 kilometre, and it's 5.3% average, which tells you that 12% is short and sharp. Nonetheless, if it is wet when they get up there, it's not going to be that pleasant. And then as you go through that series of climbs, so let me just tell you, there's 1, 2, 3 to deal with. Then it wavers up and down before we come into town for the first time, and then head out on our loop. And by that time they will be motoring. They can't afford to hang around on those last 22.
No, they can't, and the breakaway's still got a reasonable sized gap at the moment as well, and showing no signs of letting up. It's a short stage, 157 k's, which is just under 100 miles, which still sounds like a fair bit, but on flat roads for these guys, in comparison to what they've done especially, it's really not very much. There's going to be some reasonably fresh legs, of course, as well, after yesterday's time trial, where not everybody went flat out. Thomas Dekker still with his rain cape.
He didn't try and put it on because we're talking about it. These things come in threes, you know. 47.4. At least the roads are dry. Tobias Ludvigsen, yet again, let me just remind you, because a lot of you are concerned about it and asking about him. He got it very wrong on what looked like a presumably readable curve, but in the wet on the individual time trial was spat out the wrong side of the road, hit the barriers, got airborne because the other side was it was cut into the hillside, and it appeared, Dan, that he'd flown about 30 feet, about 10 metres, crashed, got disentangled from his bike, thank heaven, but remarkably uninjured.
Yeah, it was remarkable that he didn't break any bones. Thankfully, great to hear the news yesterday that he was okay, at least all things considered. Yeah, I guess he must have practiced the course yesterday morning. There was 2 hours available to all the rides on closed roads for them to inspect the course. All of them would have done it, unless they weren't going for it at all. But all of the GC favourites and all of the riders who were hoping to do well on the stage will have ridden it in the morning. Ludvigsen will have been one of those. But of course it's different in race situation than it is when you're practicing. You've got that adrenaline, you're going that bit faster, you've got all the equipment on, where perhaps you've got the slightly baggier long sleeve tops, etc. in the morning, maybe not your aero helmet either. So not only was it not only was he going faster, I'm sure, as he approached that corner than he had done in the morning, but also in the morning it had been dry roads, and it was anything but dry once he got to that corner. So going into it too fast, for those of you who haven't seen it, just nothing he could really do by that point. There's no chance of braking when you've got your bike banked over in wet conditions, and he had pretty much no choice but to go over the Armco barrier on the side. And unfortunately for him, it's a fair old dip down afterwards.
It was, yes. To favour. It is 50-50, that's how they described it to us today, Dan, and I guess that means that at any part of the course you've got that that percentage chance, and so fingers crossed it stays dry.
Yeah, let's hope so. FDJ still doing all of the work here on the front. They have now been joined by Trek Factory Racing in the black and white kit there. That presumably is Ala Factory coming towards the front to aid this chase. 3 minutes and 19 seconds. Last official gap, we got 3 minutes and 8 seconds after kilometre 108. 45 Ks to go. They'll get to a peak here with around about 39 to go. Not the categorised climb, but they've got a shortish descent then before they do this climb. 1K, as you said, Carlton. It's not that hard, but it's technically challenging, let's say. It's got that maximum gradient of 12%, but there's a lot of corners. It's a narrow road as well, and particularly when they come over the top where the barriers pinch them even tighter, it is going to string the peloton out, particularly given the chase, which is having to pick up slightly in terms of speed with this gap remaining steady.
I do love a slightly bonkers primary school teacher, and the one with the tambourine or the little drumlet there is doing her best. And this, I believe, is one of the wheels, maybe a bicycle, or they didn't have time to do two. Bless them. But nonetheless, it shows you that they are enjoying themselves out there. Sister-in-law's a primary teacher, by the way. 3 to go, and they start spreading across the road. Likewise, so do the pack. And look at the pace they're putting in, but it's all too late. It's going to have to be sprinters' points only, and the GC boys are still concerned about having a safe run in. They don't want to give anything away late on. They're going to give away the victory. It's going to be about the breakaway guys today. Tulik for Europe Car, Canola, of course, for Bardiani, and Rodriguez for Giocattoli. Now then, who out of that trio is going to be? You may as well flip a coin, to be honest, because they're all pretty well matched on the run for the line, and they're looking at each other right now. They can't decide who this is going to be. If I had to take a guess, I'll say it's going to be Androni, only because the Prince manages to pick him. It was about the break, and they broke the hearts of the quick men. A stage win on the Giro d'Italia has gone the way of this one. Canola does the job, and indeed there we are. I think he may have been offering a tribute to the late Walter Wayans. Check this out. Cat and mouse, they timed it well. They got to the last 220 metres and they knew that it was now time to light it up. And off that corner, it was a crucial one, was it not? And Canola had the drop on them. He slowed up into the curve and then sped out of it. And the advantage he took on the exit of it, he delivered to the line. Well done to him. Well, you can see the pack. In the end, they were 150 metres away. That's how close it was. Bardiani, Androni, Europe Car, their representatives in the break, made it all the way on a day that was really teed up to be about the sprinters. They were fighting for minor points behind. Major ones as far as the red jersey competition is concerned. And of course, the man most animated from the pack was Buani. But at the line, an Italian victory again.
È riuscito nell'intento che gli era sfuggito lo scorso anno nella tappa da Cosenza a Matera.
What a day. Many of you have enjoyed it. We said it was going to be nuts, but we didn't really think the weather would be quite so scary. Welcome to Orpa, and the Giro just about to start to get very, very serious indeed. Stage 14, 164 kilometres with some solid climbing along the way. At the weather. Yesterday we had just about every season, what with hailstones icing up part of the road. Today, partly cloudy, temperature 17 Celsius, so it feels cool. In fact, it feels an awful lot cooler than that at the finish line. Humidity 57%. That doesn't mean a 50-50 chance of rain. It's probably higher than that today, but maybe just a light shower along the way. Here is what we're dealing with. Aglier, and then heading, as you can see, skirting the Piedmont and then cutting into the mountains, rolling gradually with the punches, I guess you might say, but certainly some to the solar plexus, I might add. The Novaes, then the Biamonte, and then a long 30-kilometre downhill before we bounce and head up to the Orpa. Bright sunshine and a festival atmosphere at the start today. And in fact, everyone looked reasonably relaxed considering what they have to deal with. I guess it is a gentle entree into the high mountains. So Piedmont still, at least at the start. And some teams with something to prove, some with something to gain. And as far as Quintana is concerned and Movistar, an awful lot to make up after his time trial. He's not been well. Let's speak to some of the contenders. A couple of non-starters to report today. Dennis Van den Der suffering a thigh injury on stage 11. He's not there. And sprinter Balletti decided against today. It is a day when we turn our minds back ever so slightly to Marco Pantani. It was his stomping ground, and in 1999 he produced, well, what turned out to be an inhuman performance at pace up this climb. So I guess with a heavy heart we remember Pantani. Certainly the fans will be putting out their banners for the late departed. And here we are, live coverage as you join us. Well, you probably can't see it from the helicopter shot here, but it has been very pacey. It's been quite punchy as well, with a lot of hopefuls going off very, very early. We're only 14 kilometres into this stage, 14 indeed, of the Giro d'Italia. In fact, we have dealt with 24 already, I beg your pardon. 164 kilometres to be dealt with today, and already we have our breakaway that seems to have been reasonably well established. We had 9, they have been joined since then, and as you can see, no great hurry now. It looks like the settlement has been made. It's about, last report's about a minute and 37, minute and 40 seconds, that sort of thing. So it's knocked back a bit, and it looks like the Maglia Rosa group is content that those up the road pose no real threat. And in fact, many teams and the usual suspects have got their men in the break, so they'll be reasonably happy. Bouhanni is being nursed by Francis de Jeux. Yesterday he was calling for action and indeed help. None was offered by the pack, and the break made it home. And so the Sprinters' Day ended without him showing his credentials, although he did lead in the pack, as you know. So they're bouncing on the pedals. It is a very sizable breakaway. We'll get a count on it for you in just a few moments' time. And here they are. Astana represented with Agnoli. Dumont for AG2R Le Mondial. I guess having a helper or a teammate with you up front would be an advantage. Androni have got 2 men in the break. Frapporti and Sella. Battaglin is here for Bardiani, who are of course constantly up in the break. Belkin managed to get Kaiser up front. Kinziato is also here. Longo Borghini of Cannondale down, and some more notables as well that may well pose at least a threat to the stage win.
Yeah, almost as expected, another big breakaway on a day where a break could make it to the finish. Pantano from Colombia is also there. Lampre managed to get 2 riders to bridge across to that front breakaway in the end. Cataneo, number 87, and Polanc also up there. Tim Wellens, who's been trying for the whole 2 weeks to get into a good breakaway, has finally made it for the Lotto Belisol team. The young and very promising Belgian is up here, number 118. Neri Sartori have Monsalve, who we've seen in a number of breaks, taking King of the Mountains points, and Omega Pharma Quickstep, who are of course defending the lead of Rigoberto Urán, have got a rider in here. Julian Vermont is that rider.
Well, it might be a good bridge. We'll see if the fireworks happen later on. I suspect that the GC riders will wait for the higher mountains, particularly Urán, who of course will be minded just to watch Cadel Evans, essentially just marking him out until we get to the high ground where he should excel. That's, well, both of them of course, but Urán in particular. Santa Romita is here for Orica Green Edge. He's only 35 minutes down, incidentally. They really are an hour and more, most of them. Kemener from Europe Car makes it again, so the dark green are represented. Giant Shimano as well have Albert Timmer. Dario Cataldo still up there for Team Sky. That's a good man to have up there, Dan. And there's a few others as well.
Yeah, a couple more, amongst them Nicholas Roach. Many people will be pleased to hear that. Of course, he was in the breakaway a few days ago, but didn't quite make it towards the finish. And in the end, his teammate Mick Rogers managing to take a fine solo victory. But Roach is in this group, and for me, one of the best climbers. I think if we had to pick a few out, it would be he, Nicholas Roach, Cataldo, Santa Romita, maybe Sella, but I think his best days are behind him. But it's a strong breakaway. You can see behind the group is being controlled by Alessandro Patacchi of the Omega Pharma Quickstep team at quite a light tempo, so as you'd expect, that gap is continuing to grow. It's gone up another minute since we came on air just a few moments ago. They're now on the first categorised climb of the day, La Serra, which is 586 metres above sea level. You can see it there now. They're just starting to head up there. I can tell you that the bunch did split in two under the impetus of all the attacks at the very start of the day. It seems to be back together now. I think they've both come back, this big group together after a slowing once the breakaway was decided. It was all okay. Nobody too threatening in the overall classification. In fact, looking down, I can't initially see anyone within half an hour of the race lead. I think the best place rider, Polanc, I believe, from Lampre Reader, 32 minutes and 34 seconds down.
Yeah, Santa Romita himself, 35 minutes and 33. The one man we didn't mention from the break, Trek Factory Racing, have got Danilo Hondo, the great old stager. We'll see whether the veteran can turn the clock back, shall we? Turning your mind to the map, this is what we're dealing with today, and it really is a proper test to mere mortals. And indeed, as you saw earlier, it is the stomping ground, or was indeed, of Pantani, and it's part of a remembrance of the man who still finds a place in the heart very much of Italian cycling fans. So you'll see a few banners around there, around his name today, constantly on display. A bit of a cloud as far as the rest of the world are concerned around Pantani and his name, but nonetheless, sympathy, I guess, for what was a great name, at least within his era. They're on a climb at the moment, and it's a pretty stiff one as well, to sort of just introduce you to the punishment of the day. 7 kilometres in length, well, a little bit more than that, but 7 kilometres, around 5%. So it is going to be a way of working your way into the day. There's a descent which is about 11k, and then we have 45 kilometres of rolling countryside before the real climbs of the day begin, Dan, and it's a proper test at long last, category 1. And looking forward to the Novace, the Alp, 4 kilometres of 12%. That's going to hurt.
It is going to hurt. It comes just after the midway point of the stage, so by that point the breakaway should be very, very established. They'll have been going at a good tempo, and behind, wouldn't be surprised to see the gap somewhere over 7 or 8 minutes, depending on how much of a leash they want to give them. But really no particular reason for Omega Pharma Quickstep to keep it too close today. If anything, unless Urán is that confident of taking the bonus seconds on the finish line, it's almost better for him to have them swept up, so that the likes of Evans, Quintana and his other competitors aren't able to take any time back in that manner. But yeah, we come to the Alp, which is a really, really big test. In fact, as you said, Carlton, the 9 kilometres in length, but it's that central section which has a maximum of 16%. It's probably the hardest climb of today's stage, although coming where it does, you might not see too much action there. But the finish, of course, we should do up to Europa, 1,142 metres above sea level. Perhaps not the toughest, or definitely not the toughest mountaintop finish that they're going to have to deal with over the next and final part of this Giro. But still, nonetheless, I think I hope we see some good attacks, maybe from Quintana. I think this is a big day for Movistar and Quintana. If he doesn't feel good today, if he doesn't take time back, then I think the race for the overall could be over. Although, as I said yesterday, I should probably stop making predictions.
Well, it's our job. And if some of you would like to join in the fun today, it's going to be a long one, so we'll have a chance to get to you. We are on Twitter. It's Carlton Kirby. And of course, Daniel Lloyd 1 is his handle, DANIELLLOYD, and then the number 1, and Carlton Kirby, which is me, CARLTONKIRBY. 136.7 kilometres to go. Size chipboard for good luck. Don't know whether it'll work. We'll find out. 133 kilometres to go. Yes, just momentarily dwelling on Buani. He is in red. He does want to win the red jersey, and I think the bias that they're offering the sprinters has kept this competition alive, because the points that they can garner on a sprint day are so out of kilter with a normal average throughout, 50 at the line, that it's worth racing on for them. And by so doing, they're keeping a lot of sprint interest in the pack, and indeed holding on to some of the quick men for later on, which is a good idea. Generally speaking, Italians, being blessed so much with mountainous terrain, are quite engaged with mountainous holidays, and you do find resorts where people go in summer, and in fact we've been tempted, haven't we, by a few, and been saying, why do we go to the beaches? It's lovely up here.
It's always tempting to come back here on a holiday. I guess we just think, well, we'll be back here for 3 weeks next May anyway. But it's a beautiful country. I mean, there's so many amazing parts. Yeah, it's amazing to... you know, that's why we do it for free.
Yeah, I basically take Dan's fee because I have to put up with him, so I need paying. 105.6 kilometres to go. They're sailing around this rather nicely. We've got a good old pace today, but it's going to come to a close, and in fine style as well. We're on a 45 kilometre run that will take us well, quite some time to be dealt with along the way. But as soon as we start climbing, that'll be after they've been in the saddle, just after the halfway marker today. So it will be with what, about 80 odd kilometres to go. So we've still got 20 of the sort of rolling Piedmont flatland area. It is quite remarkable when the Alps suddenly do throw up. That sounded worse than I meant it to. Oh my goodness, and we've already got a compression on a roundabout. Well, that's I don't know, Dan. It's one of those high-speed areas. It's a little bit more technical than perhaps Vikanen's on the ground as well, amongst Ameli and Neri Satoli have got 3 men on the deck. Omega Pharma led into that, so I guess that was the safest place, and Sky have been bitten here as well, as Buani's boys.
Yeah, that's Konstantin Sitsu, who's still on the floor, not looking great, just being helped up by his teammate Bernie Eisel there. He's their best placed rider in the general classification at the moment. Another slight lapse of concentration, touch of wheel, as you said, Carlson, the compression there after the roundabout. 2 packs effectively coming back into one again. Didn't see exactly what happened there, but let's hope, of course, that everybody's okay. But that, of course, is good news for the breakaway. They're now sitting up here in the bunch and waiting to see exactly what happened and who's down, and letting them get back on.
Yes, well, I'm just hoping that they are indeed all well. Arashiro has gone down and stayed down for Europe Car, and he's still down, and he's being attended to at the side of the road here. That doesn't look great. That is the Japanese champion, incidentally, so don't look for the green of Europe Car. He's wearing the Rising Sun. Let's have a look. Now, this is it. Oh, yeah, there's a tag on the inside. No pennant man there, and it was an odd roundabout to take. And in fact, it was a flying bike, I think possibly from Arashiro or Vikanen, one of the other. I think it's Arashiro's bike that actually really went upside down, so he took the biggest hit, and he's still on the ground, I'm afraid to tell you. We've got the alternative view here for you. There he is, Dan.
Yeah, just came slightly further in the road exit from the roundabout than perhaps you'd normally get. Not sure whether that caught Arashiro there by surprise. Hard to know sometimes with these crashes from the overhead shots exactly what the reason for it was, but obviously just not taking the corner well enough. There's Graham Watson on the floor there with, or on the ground there should I say, with his yellow helmet, most famous photographer in cycling. Incidentally, I think Tim Dewar, a good friend of mine, is banned from taking photos today. I was looking through the list of penalties yesterday, and he and his motorbike pilot
got in the way,
taken off the race for not, I think, not taking on the instructions of the commissaires.
Yes, we actually saw it, Dan. We're actually saying get out of the inside line, which these guys are going to want. We also saw it on the time trial, which wasn't great, and so unfortunately the photographer actually paying the price for some slack motorcycle riding, I think. Generally speaking, they are very well behaved and indeed very good at what they do. The pictures you get generally are clean. It doesn't really feel like an incursion most of the time. Good to see Arashiro back on his bike.
Yeah, he's actually going past the Team Sky riders at the moment. Sitsu is the rider at the back of your screens there, just waiting for his team car. I'm not sure if this means that he's slightly more hurt than perhaps we expected, but we'll get more news and updates on him very soon. They have just spread across the road slightly. The pace, as you can see, not extremely slow, but slightly lesser pace than we had before with Pataki on the front. Latest time gap that we've got, 6 minutes and 37 seconds between a group of 21 riders today up the road and the rest of the group, main peloton, sat behind. Arashiro just having a change of bikes now, off that pink one and onto a white one.
Yeah, the pink bike, incidentally, provided to him by the Japanese Cycling Federation as a sort of a good luck charm, I guess. And we were asking what the Japanese writing was on it. It said Japan and his name. So they weren't sort of bigging him up in any other way. It wasn't so go little legs, do your stuff or anything like that. Anyway, thankfully his little legs are like bees' wings at the moment. He's getting back where he should be, and he'll have a few teammates that will come and help him out, and I hope he doesn't take too much of a body shock out of that. He's taken a tumble and he's back on his bike, which is good. 101.5 kilometres to go, and the riders now are wary of that. The speed has dropped and they're starting to warn each other of all kind of incursions, street furniture wise, along the way. And generally riders do look after each other, don't they?
Yeah, you normally see them wait for each other if there's a big crash in this situation. Of course, it's different once you get to the crunch point of the race, but still, with 101 kilometres to go, they've got another 3.5 hours of racing ahead of them over the mountains, and only can find a quick step in the situation they were in, could very much afford to just wait and allow riders to come back towards the peloton. And you know, I think there is that solidarity, perhaps slightly less now than there was in the past, but you know, everyone knows that this is a tough career, that it's a dangerous sport, and they'll try and help each other out if they can.
Yes, indeed. Nobody wants to see anyone in an injurious situation at all. Well, here they are. Listen to this crowd. Rolling through the intermediate sprint along the way, and it's good to see that these are being properly contested as we go. Clock just rolling on us as we come across that line, and I think it was Pantano from Colombia that took, I beg your pardon, Longo Borghini from Cannondale that took the points upon that line. Some big transitions as well today. Road surface wise, it's a pretty good one. We've mentioned that earlier, but there are these pinch points and some nasty turns and approaches, and some squeeze points as well, even within the climbs.
Yeah, I haven't actually ridden over these climbs as far as I know before. I've said it in the past, but my recollection of names and towns of where I rode through during my time doing the Giro d'Italia leaves a little bit to be desired. But yeah, of course, you know, some of these climbs are going to be particularly narrow. There's going to be multiple hairpins. We can see on our Garibaldi book all of the information that you can possibly need. You know, the same as ever really when you get to the higher mountains. There's multiple hairpins. That means going uphill and also down the other side, which makes it you know, technically quite challenging, but the riders are used to it. You know, there's not many here in the race that are doing their first Grand Tour, and there's barely any who have ridden in the mountains before. The dangers come mostly when you're trying to chase back onto the group. So it's actually the guys in the gruppetto who will take the most risks often in order to try and get inside this time limit which they set every single day of the race. They want to make up time on their rivals or their GC counterpart, shall we say, on the descents, because it makes it easier for them to get inside the time limit. So they you only have to speak to Magnus Bagstedt, one of our colleagues, Carlton, who won Paris-Roubaix, and you know, he used to really push things on the descents. He was almost 100 kilograms even when he was race fit as a rider. So I remember him just saying during the commentary actually at the Tour de Tour de Romandy recently, he said, yeah, Vincenzo Nibali is a fantastic descender. He's the only climber who ever kept up with me downhill.
That's Big Maggie for you. Yes, he's just under 9 minutes is the gap, and they're approaching the transition, which is why the pace is up and they all want to be in a safe place. Just about to head off the highway and turn on to our climb today. A little bit of a zigzag down, let's hope they all stay safe, and then they'll get onto the more gnarly roads in a few moments' time, and then they'll be out of the saddle and going for it. In fact, they're just about there now. Yeah,
the German rider Patrick Gretsch, who did a great time trial the other day, on the front there for course Pozzovivo, although the small climber from Italy had lost the wheel of his teammate, so he was looking round there to make sure that he was okay. But that's the kind of job all these guys will be doing for their leaders over the forthcoming part of the stage, just keeping them safe on the run into these climbs.
This looks like the Rosata Valmosca, suggests something modestly Eastern European. There are a number of different styles in this part of the world. We see a lot of Spanish-style villas as well. And it looks like they're playing a game of human chess. That's the giants in the locale. Give them a wave. Oh, there you are. Obviously, helicopter fans as opposed to cycling fans are missing it. It's behind you. We are in Crevacuore. At least that's where we are looking down upon at the moment. And in fact, this is in the province of Biella. That's about all I know. But they like a big game of chess. That's what I do know. You see, if they were going to do it real, they'd be using real horses, wouldn't they? Meanwhile, up the climb. Looking at the front of the race. Just under 75 kilometres to go, 8 minutes and 47. Break went off reasonably early. Nobody here a real threat in the general classification, but we've got some guys who, well, could pose an issue as regarding a stage victory. We've got some proper talent here. Dario Cataldo for Team Sky, ably supported by Edvald Bosenhagen. We've got Nicholas Roach from Tinkoff Saxo, and we have Orica Greenedge with Santa Romita. There, he's not going off the nose just now. They're about to peak out on this one, Dan, and then they'll be in a much more relaxed place.
Yeah, it's pretty intense descent though, and if the surface is anything like we're seeing now on the climb, then they're going to have to take precaution on the way down and make sure that they stay safe. Edvald Bosenhagen right up there towards the front. Looking further back, well, Agnoli from the Astana team has certainly been looking fairly quiet, hasn't made any attempt to come up towards the front. I'm not sure if he's just doing that deliberately or if he's not on a great day and he's struggling to hang on to this breakaway. But I think his job today might well be to help Aru if he does come across. I mean, if we look at the early time check from the time trial a couple of days ago, Aru was the best almost of everyone, only Pozzovivo was better, and I think that gave us a good indication of how some of the top favourites were climbing the other day. So it might be that Aru's thinking of doing something on the final climb towards the finish, and we have got some flatter gradients, flatter sections of this climb, so if you have got a rider up the road who you can bridge across to on a good day, they can really help you to keep your speed on those flatter sections.
Al Timmer looks like he's part of the cast of Star Trek. That looked very scary. Forthright. Focused. Yeah. 8 minutes and 5. 71.2 kilometres to go. But significantly, only 2 more kilometres of climbing before they get on the descent. Looks like they've sorted out the little skirmishes, and it's on as even further back in the pack. I think it was basically BMC just trying to get into a safe place on behalf of Cadel Evans. He's bouncing like a good one, as per usual, not out of the saddle just yet. He's one of the quickest to go out the saddle when he needs to. He's just a man who likes his comfort and is happy in all different forms on the bike. we saw earlier on that his bike is set very focused, isn't it? He gets himself to an extraordinarily flat, in fact more than that, angle when he's just almost at ease.
Yeah, there's some riders much more naturally able to do that than others. Some people are very, very flexible naturally. That just doesn't go for athletes, but it's also for the general public. You know, kids are normally more flexible, but my kids at home can barely touch their toes, whereas I can still, even though I don't stretch very much. So there's some natural differences, and of course when it comes to time trialling especially, where you're really kind of pulling on your hamstrings more as you bend your back down and, you know, roll your hips forward to get into that low position. That makes a big difference. Most people are able to get into the position. Some lose more power than others, and some, like Bradley Wiggins, hardly lose any power at all in that position, partly due to flexibility, partly due to the amount of time he's spent on that position in his track days and time trialling over the years.
71 kilometres to go. When it says 69, they'll be heading downhill, our breakaway riders. What are your hopes for Nicholas Roach today? I'm actually, you know, I was thinking of putting my 10 pence upon him today. He's had his bumps. He took some amazing road rash up to Monte Copiolo, you may remember. Monte Cassino, I beg your pardon. Looked really nasty. That was on stage 6. So today being stage 14. He's had some recovery time. It is amazing how quickly riders just get back into their stride. I think partially it's just because they start ignoring the pain. There are the ability to take pain is frankly part of being a cyclist.
Really.
Yes, exactly. And
it hurts.
They don't dwell on their injuries at all. And well, Nico, he'll still be scabbing up good and proper, but at the moment he's scampering up this climb. And yeah, don't count him out at all. In fact, count him in as the day's potential favourites, amongst them with Cataldo, I think, and Santa Romita from the break. And if it comes back together, Pozzovivo, and I think Micah has got a great chance, only because he's so brutally honest about his own potential. He'll just think to hell with it.
Well,
Been the plan, I'm off.
I did mention it earlier, I'm going to say it again, but I just caught this video. I can't remember who it was from. It might have been from the Global Cycling Network, but I'm not entirely sure. But as he crossed the line on the time trial, and somebody said, he said to somebody, "Where did I come?" And they said, "Second." And they said, "What are your hopes for the rest of the week?" Immediately after he finished, he said the best is yet to come. He was really forthright about it.
Yeah.
You know, he'd literally just come across the line in a very hard time trial, which finished on a climb, so, you know, really in the red, not much blood going round to his head, but he's obviously confident. And I think normally, of course, when I interview him a few moments later, he has had time to calm down. He's pretty quiet then and fairly reserved, but given the adrenaline when he crossed the line, I think the truth came out, and he, you know, is feeling good, that's for sure.
Yeah,
he's very forthright and attentive there in third place, Carlton. I think he's going to be going for this one. If he does pick up maximum points, he's going to be up to 48, which would put him second behind Arredondo, still with a couple more climbs to come. So he's going to make big inroads today.
Yeah, he said it's all out very early, and he's clearly motivated for this. It wasn't just about shedding those around him on the first categorised climb of the day. He got a plan, and if he gets this next climb himself, and he's gone off for it, absolutely off the nose here. He's racing for it. He wants those points, and it will move him into second place as far as the standings are concerned in the climbers category. Oh, and a complaint being issued here. Yes, that wasn't fair. All's fair in love, war, climbing, sprinting and the rest of it. Yeah, you've got to have your wits about you and a bit of strength, determination, maybe just a bit of meanness. And Tim Whelan's doing a job there. Goes into second.
He's looking good, actually.
He's
incidental of the actual climbers competition. In terms of the stage, you know, if they're going to have a chance of winning, he's looking pretty sprightly, isn't he?
Yeah, terrific. I'm very pleased that he showed some spirit. Oh, hello, we got this. Oh dear, it's a good job that wasn't at full volume, I can tell you that one. I worked out what Monsalve shouted there, so I don't know whether you can go and speed it up, but it wasn't pretty. Did you hear it? Said in very, very low terms. Yes, he issued an oath. Yes, 68.9 kilometres for those who are on the downhill. It's going to be a while before the main pack reach the crest, so it's about the downhill of the breakaways where the interest lies just at the moment. It's minor points for these guys. They're just doing a job. But on the downhill section, I can tell you it's looking pretty hairy. I hope we go there soon.
So 32 points there, if he's not relegated, for Tim Vellens of Lotto Belisol. So that does indeed take him up to 48 in that competition. Second place, 20 points for him is Monsal. That takes him up to 33. So he's now up to 4th place in that competition. There's the clock ticking away then on the left-hand side of your screens, which our commissaires will have started as the first breakaway riders went over the top. Tim Vellens, of course, being the first of those from Lotto Belisol. So in around about 3 minutes' time, we'll see this group crest over the top and begin their descent. And as we've already mentioned, there is no flat now between the start, or between the end of that descent and the start of the following climb. The Bielmonte, a second category climb. And if Tim Vellens takes maximum points up there again, that will give him an extra 14 points, and then he really will start to encroach on the lead of Arredondo. 14 points then, well, that will take him up to, let me count it up, I'll be back with you in a minute.
Okay, I'll watch this descent then and hope we can stay with it for a while. As you can see, we've got some fizzy pictures on your screen, and that's the reason why. But the helicopter has caught up with them, and just look at what they're dealing with, Dan. These are nasty turns that they're having to deal with. Tim Vellens, who went over first, is not primary on the descent, I can tell you. He's a big man, but nonetheless we dip down and it looks like a proper drive into all of the curves. And look at this, that's the motorcycle really earning its crust, because the cyclist can whip through those curves much better. Some of these little hairpins, we're talking 16 to 20% on some of the switches.
Yeah, and the breakaway should gain time on the group behind on this descent. As you can see, are taking a few more risks than we're likely to see the GC contenders take. You can't see the exits of a lot of these corners, Carlton, with the houses there on the side of the road very much next to the roadside itself, so it makes it difficult to judge your speed going into some of these corners.
It does indeed. We've got a very focused series of switchbacks. This is not one of them, but there are plenty more to come. Also as well, you saw Sorensen getting it very, very wrong on the individual time trial. Ludvigsen, I beg your pardon. Getting the drive and having the confidence to take this kind of speed is one thing, but then you've got to shed it on a blind corner and hope that you don't get it wrong on the exit. And that was a very, very big piece of bravery, I think you might say. Some else would call it madness. Having the road mapped out for you on the climb is one thing, but having it on the descent can be such a huge advantage. If you know the locale, you can really thread a golden thread along the road as you descend, can't you?
Yeah, perhaps a little bit too early though for anyone to really start to strive on at the front alone. Mick Rogers, the Australian from Tinkoff Saxo, comes up towards the front as expected, bringing his leader for the GC, Rafael Majka, into a safe position as they come towards the top of the climb and begin, of course, the descent. Let's see what the time gap is coming over the top. You can see still a big group there behind, and it's going to compress and come together as they exit the climb, but with no time between the descent and the start of the next climb, won't be long before we start to see big group autos form behind.
Yep, here they are then, and the motorcycle cams just about to take their leave as well. We're on a static as one's seated itself at the side of the road. Through they come, pick out your favourites. Cadell just going by, right, Ejodal likewise. The Colombian champion also involved, Rubiano, and they're really wrestling with themselves at the mountain. Raikkonen takes himself a drink, others around as well, and in fact some of the handovers were a bit tardy and just affecting some of those who at least have now got to a zone where they can take it easy ahead of the descent. Look at this, Dan.
Yeah, this is the back end of the breakaway group. Danilo Hondo there with a rain jacket on, so presumably it's fairly cool as they come up towards the top of these climbs, 1400 metres above sea level. Actually, again, surprised see Hondo off the back on the descent. He's pretty confident when it comes to going downhill and taking corners, but you know, he's a calm rider. He knows exactly what he's doing. He's been around for a long time, as has Alessandro Patacchi, who is the rider doing the bulk of the chasing in the group behind. They've been teammates, in fact, on a number of occasions over the years.
Saw Thomas to get there, just taking a little bit of newspaper, packing it inside his jersey just to offer up a bit of protection from the cold. It is around 11-12 degrees underneath at the peaks here in the trees, and when you're the speeds that they're going to be generating on this descent, if you've sweated up a bit, Dan, you can actually it can actually cause a bit of a chill as well as you're heading downhill.
Yeah, it's exactly that, especially almost when it's you know, on a stage like today, where, as you said, Carl, you're putting a lot of effort in on the climbs. You know, when it's super hot in the middle of summer, it makes no difference whatsoever. But in May, here in Italy, especially when they come to the higher mountains that they're going to come across later on in the race, it really is cold towards the top. But of course, when you're climbing, you're still sweating, you're producing heat, and that's fine when you're climbing. But of course, once you go over the other side, as soon as you stop producing the same amount of energy, the same amount of power, you cool down very quickly. And then, of course, you've got the wind, very chilly wind, against your body, and that's why we'll sometimes see riders take those newspapers. You'll see it a few moments ago. It's a bit old school, but it still works. It basically just keeps the wind off your chest if you put, you know, some pieces of newspaper down underneath your jersey, which makes a surprisingly big difference.
Nice as well to see it was an old boy that was handing it out, and I think it was a copy of the Gazzetta. I didn't quite see how pink it was, but the Corriere dello Sport is another newspaper that tempts you in the morning. It's great to see the relaxed nature of the Italian gentleman at ease in the morning with his espresso and his newspaper in hand, especially if the sun is shining. 61.2 kilometres to go. We're on the descent of the first major climb of today. We've had a Category 3, we've dealt with the Category 1. There are two serious peaks to finish, and indeed our run to Europa is uphill and nasty. Big sort out today. There'll be some huge time gaps thrown up, but we do have a breakaway. It's 21 riders and they look comfortable, especially at speed. A smaller group on a descent, able to pick its lines much more happily, and they're in a train of peace, it looks like at the moment. Peace train. 7 minutes and 27 is the gap back to those further up the mountain, that of course include all our main GC guys, and they are awaiting everybody at Europa. There's a huge crowd. They're dotted on the mountainsides today. It's a lovely part of the world and a great day to go racing. The weather finally is proper Giro d'Italia weather. Slightly cool, no breeze, but absolutely brilliant brightness, which is illuminating this magnificent part of the world, and that's a sight we always love to see. A happy peloton at pace, all strung out on a mountain. It's one of cycling's classic views, I think it's fair to say. Thank you, by the way, to all of you who've written in on Twitter. Nice to have your company. Those of you who've struggled to find us and finally have include Debbie Hill, so she's very pleased. And indeed Glenn Miller, Pennsylvania, whatever the rest of that title was. Let's just dwell on this, shall we? Nice little switch. You know, it's not just about going downhill on mountain roads, it's about dealing with the villages and all the little obstacles that they throw up. And road design varies, and so does surface. Check this out. We're on pave at the moment. That's a sudden rude rattle through the seat stem, and then back onto smooth tarmac, and we're climbing again. That was your bounce.
Yep, there's something they're going to have to deal with actually throughout the stage today. Is some of that pave. Towards the end of the stage here on the climb, there's a number of little small villages. A couple of them have that small pave, and you know, watching some videos of previous parts of this race over the years where this climb has been used, I was noticing how much of the pavement there was. Again, it's something which could make a difference when it's wet, but today shouldn't make much of a difference at all. But that said, the pave part of the climb does come at the steepest part, with around about 6 kilometres to go of the stage. 59.2 kilometres to go now, and so they are on the next climb, which is the Bielmonte. So I think about time for me to go through the gradients and the distance of this climb. It's not as steep as the previous one, but it's long, 18.35 kilometres in length. The opening 6 kilometres average 5.1%. The hardest section once again in the middle. We've got a 6 kilometre area which is averaging 8.3%, and towards the end of that we'll get a 13% maximum gradient. It then starts to tail off slightly, despite the fact they've still got 7k's to the top. The following average 5%. They actually go downhill then before 2k's go up at 6% towards the top. But yeah, not much respite for these riders, because of course they come straight over the previous climb, down the descent, which didn't give them much respite, because it was a descent where you really needed to concentrate the whole way down, immediately into this one, which is going to take them around about 40 minutes to get up. So they'll be cresting this somewhere towards the 4 o'clock time in this local area. It depends very much on how that group organises itself behind.
Yes, right now, just seeing if we've got a look at the secondary group on our monitor that's chasing them down. The most animated, apart from Nicholas Roche, is doing a super job, our Europe car, along with Ryder Ejedal, who are having a fantastic time of things, trying to push on. 41.9, he's got just 300 metres and he'll be over and heading downhill for a long time. Nicholas Roche decided he'd had enough of being part of a 21-man breakaway that had started to thin down anyway, and he has decided that this day may well just offer him something. He's wearing a skin suit today, which tells you that he has a purpose, and right now he's about to sail over the crest of our third climb of the day. 100 metres left until he starts to cruise, and then it's downhill on that run for the base of our final test today. By the time he gets there, he's probably going to have company. It's a question of who and whether he can kick again after allowing those legs to rest. Through goes Nicholas Roche, and look at this race on, and it is of course Wellens who wants those points as well, and he's sprung out and done a superb job, second over the line at this point, and Wellens taking another hatful of points in the King of the Mountains competition. Chapeau to him. That, though, that animation for those points means that Roche now has company on the descent. But yes, a lot of racing still to be had, and you know, gaps can be bridged. 6 minutes and 55 is the gap that Ryder Ejedal started with at the beginning of the day, the deficit I should say, back to Cadel Evans, and he would like to reduce that gap as we go. It's party time at the finish line, but these guys not celebrating absolutely nothing yet. You can't call it down, and we've said that so often on this Giro. Yeah, we can't at all. It's looking okay from my point of view for the breakaway. They should be able to keep the majority of this 4 minutes lead over the group behind. And let's not forget, they have made a bit of an effort in that counter-attack group, Hagedal and Roland, etc. Here's the third group on the road. Two riders from Bardiani here, Zardini and Geraxi, followed by Nathan Haas, who was instrumental in getting Ryder Hagedal up the road. So let's see what the time difference is between those two groups. Then of course here we've got what's left of the main group, still being led by Omega Pharma Quickstep, coming up to 5 minutes, as you can see now on your screens, since Nicholas Roche went across this King of the Mountains point, the second to last King of the Mountains point of today, the final one being right here on the finish line in Oropa. 3 hours and 40 minutes they've spent in the saddle so far. First category climb for them still to come. 36.8 kilometres to go. That's for Nicholas Roche. Everyone else has still got further to travel. We're just staying with the leader's jersey at the moment on the back of Rigoberto Urán, along with Cadel Evans, of course, and Pozzovivo, who may well be a feature today, but he's got a lot to do. And in fact, they are around 5.5 minutes and a little bit more off those up front, and they're approaching that final intermediate climb of the day before we of course finish on the climb up to Oropa, and they'll come underneath this banner and then start their descent, and it's quite a long one, 30 or so kilometres, and in fact it skirts down the side of the mountain and traces its way. They've managed to get the Big Mac up here. I don't know where they're going to park it, and I think that's the problem. May well have to go into reverse, thinking anything but is Nicholas Roche. And just look at the speeds he's carrying in this descent, and he's looking comfortable with it. Yeah, he's looking good. He's taking on more fluids, more calories as well through gels. I've noticed on my other screen. You can see the time gaps there to the other main groups. We haven't at the moment got a gap
between Nicholas Roach and the other breakaway riders. In fact, I don't think we've got a camera on them at the moment.
Wow. It's, as we said, it's a bit of a cycling festival at the line. You only have to mention Pantani in one of his favourite stages, and you suddenly draw in the attention of the cycling public. And of course, as soon as this was noted as part of the Giro course, then it was inevitably going to be a festival, and that's what we've got. A large green in front of the Basilica at the end of today in Europa, and it looks terrific. Pace on the side of the mountain is a high one. There are subsections that get very, very focused, but nothing dangerous, not like we had off the second climb of the day, the Alpe Novies. But look at rider Heijendal bunny hopping over a bit of newly laid tarmac on a crack of the road. He's very aware when it comes to downhill. He saves a lot of energy, but right now he'll just comfortably sit here and maybe just save something for the end of the day. But Nicholas Roach is absolutely powering into each corner, and that shows a man at ease on his bike at this speed, being able to continue to take a corner and indeed check behind you at the same time. That is confidence.
Oh, it is. I'd love to know what the time gap is between Nicholas Roach and his fellow breakaway companions. Some way behind now. We can only assume by the fact that the motorbike is behind him that they can't be too close, and he's been looking over his shoulder to check exactly what the gap is between himself and the rest of the riders. He'll be hoping, of course, that they are sitting up. Wouldn't be at all surprised the Edvald Boasson Hagen really making some inroads into this man. We've talked about him before. He's a great descender, but maybe he's just staying back with his teammate Cataldo.
They get to the very bottom of this descent with about 12 kilometres to go. It sort of flattens and then descends again, so there's a little subsection within it right at the very end. But yes, with about 12k from home, he's going to feel like he's got a possibility. 12 kilometres doesn't sound like much, but the final climb today, Dan, is a proper test.
Oh, it is, yeah. It's a first category climb. The lower slopes, once again, not the toughest that they're going to have to deal with, but yeah, if we look at it, it averages 2.5% for the first K. Sort of ramps up, but the average gradient 4.3% for the following four, but that toughest one coming at halfway up, 13% the gradient maximum there.
Slightly worried that, at least from that shot, couldn't see Cadel Evans on the descent. We'll get a check on that as soon as we possibly can. Ryder Heijendal is probably going to have a go, and likewise Nathan Haas feels like he's got what it takes on a descent as well. Looking at Nathan Haas now, who's left behind the Bardiani boys of Pirazzi and Zardini and Rabatini and struck out. It is a confidence thing on a mountain descent, as you can see, and I think we may well have just picked up Cadel and his boys as part of this group, albeit strung out. It has to be said, only 33 kilometres to go, but it is such a long descent that much of that number is going to be expunged very, very quickly indeed in the dappled sunshine which has blessed us today. The weather's been lovely, thank heaven.
Yeah, it's really been great for them today. It's slightly overcast here at the finish, but the riders won't mind that at all. You can see it's bright sunshine where they are at the moment, but yeah, here at the finish, clouded over slightly, but they won't mind that. A little bit cooler for this final climb where they're going to be making maximum effort towards the finish. And here is the second group on the road, or the first group behind our lone leader Nicholas Roach. That was Agnoli of the Astana team just at the front of affairs there. Santaromita, fellow Italian from the Orica Greenedge team, one of only 4 riders left from that team in this race. He's also being very alert towards the front. He's determined to try and go for stage victory today, and he won't want to see Roach go too far up the road.
Apologies for my my exclamation earlier on. Ryder Heijendal has got such unbelievable bike handling skills that when he bunny hopped over the tram line, I thought he was just about to engage in an accident, but thankfully didn't. The overbanding is missing from the centre of the road here. They've laid it on 2 sections, so they've done the mountain road, keeping half of it open and then laid the other, and it's giving that tram line through the middle that they're doing their best to avoid. Ryder Heijendal saw it was coming up and bunny hopped over it, and that was why I got a bit frightened on his behalf. Looking after him. 31.2 kilometres to go, and we're streaming down this mountain. We are off the Belmonte and we are heading for the Europa and it's at pace, and still this is yet another stage where you just cannot call it. There's a lot of talent out here that are already reaching out and going for glory. Nicholas Roach is the man who is out there and alone. We still do not have a time gap on him, I'm afraid, but the belief is it's about 20 seconds on the chasers, of which there are some quality intermediate groups are forming all over this mountain, the best of which is Ejidal with Roland, Izagir and Zausti, Turo and Zoidel, the Austrian champion. And it won't be long before we hook up with them. We're just staying on the back of the pink jersey group at the moment. That main group is 5 minutes and 43 down on Nicholas Roach, but we don't have an intermediate gap on Roach back to the breakaway riders, from whom he decided to break away himself. "30 kilometres to go." Today was about 21 riders that went up the road, and we thought for much of the day that they were going to be allowed their head. Didn't seem that way a few moments ago, when all of a sudden this got quite busy, and indeed even the main peloton started sending riders up the road. Oh, we've got a man down, Colombian champion on the deck, and that will have been at pace, and a car is with him very, very quickly, and the medics are there, but he is not moving, and I'm not surprised. Let's just hope he's okay, and took a rolling tumble, but the bike's still with him, which suggests he was clipped in for much of it. I hope he is okay, but he's in no hurry to stand up. He's staying put. One thing, he is, in fact he's doing it now, he did not look in pain, and his Columbia car is with him, and he's walking, should be okay. Hopefully he took a slide, I think that's what it was. So taking some of the impact away, and he's back up on his feet, and they'll have a new bike for him in a few moments' time. 29.1 kilometres to go. You've got to be careful out here, Dan.
Yeah, you have. That would have been painful. It doesn't matter what you land on at that speed, it's going to hurt. Hopefully he'll be able to get back onto his bike and finish today's stage, but again, not exactly what you want 3/4 or more of the way through a big mountain stage. He was obviously in that group of favourites still, so it wasn't on a bad day by any means.
Sailing the corners beautifully. If you want to know how to make the road as narrow as possible, that's how you do it.
This the group of favourites then, still reasonably big at this point through the stage. I'd say there's about 50 guys left here. Looks like it's Movistar now who have taken over towards the front. I think that must mean that Nairo Quintana is feeling good today. Here we go then, right at the front of the race. We've got Quinziato joining Albert Timmer, the rider from Giant Shimano, and then up the front there in the red at BMC. That is Quinziato. He's doing his best to push on. Of course, he's got his teammate Evans back in the group of favourites, but to me that looked like Quinziato was being given some leeway to go for his own race today. It would be great to see him have a chance of a stage victory. He is of course a rider who does so much work for other guys during his career. He gets his own chances at the classics, but predominantly at the Grand Tours, always at the side of people like Evans, and I'm sure he'll be at the side of TJ Van Garderen later this year. Just trying to look back to see if I can see Nicholas Roach in this group. Edvald Boasson-Hagen right up there towards the front. We can see the yellow of Monsalve and Neri Satoli, but can't see the yellow of Tinkoff Saxo just at the moment, but he might be in that second group, which is split slightly off the back.
.3 kilometres to go. We still have no idea where Nicholas Roach is, I'm afraid, because we've seen no pictures of whether he is back within the chasers or indeed whether he's up the road, which is our fault. We're still waiting to get that information to you, and we will do so as soon as we possibly can. 30 kilometres to go. It has been quite skittery upon the descent today. We have seen that the Colombian champion has found himself on the deck. Let's hope that everybody else stays safe. Well, it seems that Nicholas Roach has indeed been caught back up with the pack, so apologies for that. 23.4 kilometres to go, and we have had a breakaway for much of the day. They're still having their fun out here, but there are others that are trying to join the party along the way. We have some intermediate groups on this mountain. It's been a big breakdown, essentially, of what has been a solid group of breakaway riders and a chasing peloton. How this will pan out, nobody knows. We are driving in to the final at speed climb up the Europa, and then all hell surely will break loose. There's a lot of potential here in all of the different subgroups.
Yeah, there is all sorts of shenanigans going on. Riders looking to perhaps have a chance of stage victory from the main group behind. Big ask, I think, looking at the time gap. 4.5 minutes, 11k is the final climb. It's doable, but seems unlikely given the firepower we've got here in the front group. But if we look behind, there are riders there with ambitions of moving up on the general classification. We've got 2 in this group. First of those is third in line as we look from the back here. That's Ryder Hesdale, the lanky rider there from Garmin Sharp, number 91. Ahead of him, well, we've got 3 Europe car riders, and amongst those is Pierre Rolland. He is sitting best in the GC of the riders in this group at 5 minutes and 45 seconds. So if he takes back a minute or so today, if this attack pays off, he'll start to move up towards the top 8 of the general classification, which would be a good job done for him.
Pantano thought he got it at this point, so did we, and look how quickly he just loses power. Cataldo picks it up, that's where our focus was, but Battaglin was on their case, and he timed it brilliantly.
Ieri porta la vittoria, ha portato la vittoria Marco Canova e oggi una grande Enrico Battaglina. Signori, applaudiamo questi splendidi corridori. Chiudono Damiano Cunego, Fabio Duarte, José Herrera Lopez, Nathan Haas. Hanno chiuso anche la coppia del team Garmin con Boassonagen e Sebastian Henao Gomez. Classificato.
Enrico, that couldn't have been closer. Came down to the last 10 meters. He must be ecstatic with that win.
Ma un'incredibile vittoria sicuramente, poi perché ero partito proprio io al chilometro 0, quindi tutta la gara in fuga.
Take your chances when you can. At kilometer 0, I thought it was going to be a breakaway stay. And I was fortunate at the end to keep some strength in the legs, and I made it count at the end. Battaglin takes it ahead of Cataldo and Pantano. Wow. Poulenc in 4th place ahead of Nicholas Roach. Very brave performance by him. Timmer also there. You look further down that list at the arrival, and it really was outstanding what performances were made. Not least Rafa Maika. Now 1 minute and 35 behind Rigoberto Urán.
Finisce catering, le banane offerte da Fratelli Orsetti e ovviamente i biscotti offerti da Malocco, perché sono i nostri sponsor. Come ti chiami, cucciolo? Elisa, che bella che sei. Da dove arrivi, Elisa?
We do already have a breakaway. It's been a character of the last few days, of course, that the breaks have enjoyed their fun, particularly in the high ground. But today, will they make it? That's the big question. Well, bright and sunny with clouds in the locale, so partly cloudy. Temperatures around 13 Celsius and probably feeling a bit chillier than that on occasion and warmer elsewhere, depending on whether you're out of the wind. It's just blowing, but east-south-easterly, so coming in from the colder part of Central Europe. And as a result, it does have a little bit of a bite to it when it blows up, but as you can see, not too much of it around. This is what we're dealing with as far as our route is concerned today. So skirting across the foothills and then heading up into the mountains. Monte Campione, 225 kilometres in total, and the intermediate sprint is just about where we are on course at the moment. But it's all about that. Just look at that profile. Looks like a doorstop. Somebody may well be stopped in their tracks today. Will it be Oran? Who could take a step forward, particularly in the GC? An awful lot of questions will be answered today. It is, of course, beautiful. Could you say the same thing about Paolini? Probably. Carrying his beard. There you are. And pointing by the looks of it, in fact, that looks a bit like Paolini, albeit with a very strange aero helmet on top of the Domo, which sits in the centre of Bergamo. Lovely town, actually. Lovely.
Yeah, we crisscrossed it multiple times in last year's race, but only the once this year.
We finally got there in the end, though, didn't we? And Nibali had his fun in the central square. Beautiful part of the world. In fact, the high ground here is, of course, it's like a theatrical curtain. It just sort of spreads around the lowlands, the Piedmont. And when you go up into the hills, the views are absolutely spectacular. It feels like you're in heaven. No wonder they built so many basilica and seminaries, monasteries up in the high ground, because it's quite breathtaking, isn't it, Dan?
It's a great region. We've seen so many spectacular areas already in this year's race, and here we go then is our first picture of what's happening in the peloton behind. The gap now down to 8 minutes and 14 seconds. We've got a rider from Omega Pharma Quickstep on the front. Behind, though, that's interesting, Neri Sotoli, the team that missed it, have started to chase. Looking down their list of riders, though, it's hard to see exactly who's going to challenge for honours on the stage if they do bring the breakaway back. Rabatini sits in 16th place on the GC, so he's been climbing well. You think it's unlikely, really, that he's going to challenge the likes of Quintana and Pozzovivo on a day like today. Oh, yes, there's too much at stake. It may well be that some of those a little bit further down the order, like Wilco Kelderman, might have a go, and certainly, if you are talking about the top tenors, Kizilowski can have a crack as well today, the Croatian champion from Factory Racing. Let's just bring you up to date, shall we, on the marshal who got hit by a motorcycle yesterday. He's in hospital. Apparently he's stable, but he is in an induced coma after being hit, and our thoughts obviously with him and his family. Rigoberto Urán, there he is. In the pink jersey. Lost time yesterday, Dan. They ate into his lead, and he was smiling as broadly as he ever does on the podium at the end of the day, but surely now he must be minded that there's a lot of talent in this race, and there's an awful lot of this race still to be run. Yeah, well, he didn't seem to be utterly or too concerned at the end of the stage, did he? In the interviews, both with myself and with you know, after such a dominating performance in the time trial, he's a guy who's known for his climbing ability. Of course, he performed extremely well last year. He won a mountaintop finish, in fact, towards the end of the first week, whilst Bradley Wiggins, I believe, was still in the race. But I think it's a bit of a disappointment for him to have lost that time. Yesterday was a hard climb, but nothing like they're going to face in the final week of racing. And so to lose the time that he did on his key rivals, I mean, it was a complete reverse almost of the GC, the way that they crossed the line behind what was left of the breakaway in front. Of course, you know, Urán was the worst almost of the top five. Cadel Evans just in front of him, who sits second overall. Best of the lot was Quintana, who was moved up to sixth overall now. It does set it up for a fantastic final week for us, because if that trend continues, then it's going to be very close between about 5 riders over the last few stages. And that is what we can only hope for when you have a 3-week race such as this. Last thing you want is for it all to be over, done and dusted early on, and it's far from that. We have so many contenders who can get back in it. Incidentally, Quintana is off the antibiotics, and in fact yesterday was the last day that he had those. Let's check out what we're dealing with today, shall we? Valdegno to Plan di Montecampione. I described it as a doorstop at the end of the day. Some of them will come to a virtual stop on the climb. In fact, what it doesn't show you, as we're just approaching the intermediate sprint today, what it doesn't show you is that there is a big rest zone within it. You do the first 11 kilometres, we'll obviously give you more details a bit later, but it does very much flatten out through one of the intermediate towns along the way, and then it kicks up again. So it's very much a two-phaser. It could almost be 2 categorised climbs. Yeah, I think we've seen that in the past, haven't we, where there's a second category and the next one is a first, but as you rightly said, it's just a first category climb today. There's a couple of sections where it does dip down, and actually on the profile it doesn't really show it, but we drove almost downhill for a good 500 metres or so towards the top, but it's that final 4Ks really that are going to make the big difference, I think, today. Not too sure if we're going to see attacks further down the climb. Maybe Pozzovivo and Quintana will decide to form an alliance. Looking back on yesterday, Pozzovivo wasn't particularly happy with the way that Quintana rode up the final climb of the day. Said that he didn't collude enough and didn't help Pozzovivo enough with setting a pace and trying to put as much time as possible between themselves and the riders behind, who they were of course trying to distance. But meanwhile, Quintana saying he did everything he could and he was going through a bad patch at that point, but obviously went through a good patch when he latterly dropped Pozzovivo closer to the line.
Flourish day today for much of it, but well, one for the climbers. And in fact, if you put your hand, if your thumb was at work and got in the wrong place as you were looking at the map, it would look pretty easy and you'd think, sprinter's day. Oh no, it's got a huge kick up at the back. Big hopes for Quintana. Debbie Hill says, I'm looking forward to that man going well. Now, friends from Australia, well, you've had a phenomenal run of success, and your own team, of course, Orica Greenedge, sadly depleted now. Only remaining is Svein Tuft, the plucky Canadian, who of course was in pink at the beginning, Santa Romita, the Italian champion, and Michael Hepburn is the last of the Australians in Orica Greenedge. You do, of course, have Cadell Evans, who has done an amazing job yesterday of finding a few seconds along the way. In fact, he's now only 32 behind. And as Dan was pointing out at the top of the show, Moran really needs to step up to the mark, and I think today he's going to be attacked. It's a great opportunity, particularly to give himself, to heap onto him the pressure of something to think about going into the rest day, Dan. They need to work at his lack of belief, or work on that, trying to generate that in Oran. Take nothing away from Oran, he deserves to be where he is, but I think his rivals are going to have a go.
Oh, they've got to. They've no choice for the guys further down on the GC but to try and attack Oran and gain time on him on every single stage left, which finishes up a climb, of which there are quite a few. But yeah, it was a small psychological blow, I guess, for Oran yesterday when we looked down the list of riders who crossed the line. I mean, there were some fairly significant gaps for the length of the climb and for the distance out that those guys attacked. Neri Sottoli still on the front of this race at the moment. They only have 6 riders themselves left. Rabatini, as I mentioned, is the highest on the GC, just inside the top 20, in fact 16th place for him. They've also got Colli, Fedi, Fineto, Monsalve, who was of course very active yesterday, and finally Simone Ponzi, also left in the race for the fluorescent yellow team. But similar situation, I guess, to the stage which Mick Rogers won, where Roach was up in the breakaway with 13 other riders, including Dignan and many, many others. Androni, having missed the break that day, of course, did the bulk load of the chasing behind, brought it back by the top of the climb. Weren't able to do much themselves, and that's kind of how I see this panning out. It looks like Neri Sottoli have simply been told by their manager to get to the front, chase it down because they missed the break, but it doesn't seem like very likely that they'll be able to do much once they do catch it. I'll just go through exactly what the profile looks for you at home now. What's happening here? It looks not too good for the breakaway. Everybody looking around at each other. Sami Jekscher there, the German rider from Giant Shimano, just waiting to get another bottle from his team car. 52.9 Ks to go, so they can still take bottles for a further 33 Ks before that feeding is closed for the day. But yeah, 19.35 kilometres in length, this final climb. It starts at 204 metres above sea level, finishes at 1665, so we've got 1400 metres over of climbing to do at the end of today's stage. The average gradient for the entire thing is just under 8%, but that kind of belies things because there's a section in the middle of 2 kilometres which only averages just over 3%. Maximum gradient 12% comes after 7 kilometres of climbing, but it's pretty steep over the final 4Ks here to the finish line. 8.7% average there, maximum gradient over those last 4Ks 9%, so it's pretty steady, but steady hard over the last 4Ks today.
The last nasty bit as well is about 350 metres from the line. It's your final switchback as we climb up. There's plenty of them, but basically you may well want to launch your attack should you be in a blessed position to come out of that corner in the lead. That said, I think we said something similar yesterday, and in fact the two riders who did come round the corner didn't make it, and indeed they were pipped at the line in emphatic fashion by yet another victory, of course, for our team Bardiani, Battaglin, Edgy-Cataldo and Pantano at the line. Look at this. It's a lovely, lovely part of the world, and we often say it, but well, now we really mean it. It's not that we're PR people, of course. Spinone, worth a spin. Yes, the other lake, incidentally, is the bigger one with the motorised pleasure craft, the Spinone Lake. I think you're only allowed to canoe on it, and you're certainly not allowed to drop any litter in it, and they don't allow triathletes on it because it's a reservoir. There we are. You know what triathletes do when they're swimming. Leave it to your imagination. It's by Italian cycling fans, a cloud over his career, as I'm sure you know, but he still was a huge personality. Sadly, of course, no longer with us. 18.6 kilometres to go. 1 minute and 57 is the gap now, and I think the breakaway realised that they've done their job, and in fact their job is done.
Yeah, unfortunate for them. Big effort throughout the stage. They've been away for, see how long they've been on the bikes for so far today. 4 hours and 40 minutes. So they've been out there in this group working through and off for the past 4 hours, over that in fact. Unfortunate that they're not going to be able to fight it out for the victory. Here comes the first part of the steep part of the climb, 19.35 kilometres in length. They've been climbing very, very steadily for the last kilometre already, but this is where it kicks up, and it won't let off now for quite some time, Carlton. And just 2 minutes behind is a peloton rolling along at an amazing speed. The gap, as you can see, has come down massively over the last 10 kilometres. All of the GC teams right up towards the front, and it's been frantic.
18.2 kilometres, we are on the climb, and I've got to tell you, sadly for the breakaway, their time is about to run out. The clock has been ticking down for a huge advantage. It's now only 1 minute and 39. They needed at least 6 minutes. They've had more than that along the way today as they came into this last test up Monte Campione, and immediately it is very difficult indeed. You can see when it's happened to the breakaway, it has disintegrated. Cadell Evans has called for his BMC riders to get to the front. That's precisely what they've done. He wants to stay safe on all the twists and turns before we actually get onto the climb for them, but they are approaching it right now. The first 11 kilometres are averaged at 8%. But the maximum within those 8 kilometres of the 19.3 kilometres that make up the Monte Campione climb are at 12. The maximum slope then does come in the first 11 kilometres. Then you have a small period of about 4.5 kilometres where it's only 3%. And so it's all categorised within the same climb, and then it gets serious yet again, maxing at 8.7% in the run for home, with a slight respite at the very last after the final hairpin at 350 metres. So there are areas where riders, if they can just reach the flatter sections, they might be able to do something. You're looking at the dancing shoes, custom made, of Adam Hansen as he just leaves his breakaway colleagues behind. Expected Cardozo to be bigger, and here, well, he's a small man but he's a big heart, and Arredondo, he trails, don't forget, overall by a minute and 12, an hour and 12 I should say, and he has decided that that blue jersey is well worth battling for, and he's of no concern to the GC guys. He's going for it.
He's gone for it. He's already 50 metres in front of the main peloton. This, a pure climber in the truest sense of the word. He's not afraid to go on the attack. We've seen him multiple times already in this race, and straight away at the foot of this climb he's gone. 1 minute and 26 the difference between he on the right, Hansen on the left.
Somebody's after him, and I think it's the Movistar rider that's actually suddenly burst out of the peloton, and I think it might well be Hughes Arredondo. Oh, it's one of our Bardiani boys yet again.
Pirazzi.
And why not just have a go? And he certainly is. Oh, what a fantastic push it is. And in fact, it is Pirazzi. I thought it was Barbin for a moment.
Well, there's two of them up the road. It might well be the same two who we saw yesterday, Zardini as well. I wouldn't be surprised to see if it is him. Two of those guys up there now. Let's try and get a closer shot on them, and we'll just give you exactly who it is. Pirazzi's really pushing on the pedals at the front. Behind number 39 is Zardini, I believe.
And just trying to get over to the man who's animated at least the foothills of this climb. And it's Arredondo in the blue climber's jersey. He's looking for points, not time. And the GC guys are still not responding to this. And the reason is that, well, they're looking at each other and they have bigger fish to fry. There are Hansen's shoes. Getting some great ads for some shoes that are, well, basically unavailable. They're custom made by him for him. But he's the man from the break who's gone up the road. 16.9 to go. There's a lot of racing still to be had here because the speeds are going to tumble. Yeah,
Hansen doing an admirable job. It's hard to see him going all the way to the finish today. A minute and a half, having been out in the breakaway all day, but showing how well he's climbing. Perhaps normally you wouldn't expect he to be the best of the riders that were left in that breakaway group. Whether or not the others simply gave up, I'm not sure. But of course, yes, last year we saw Hansen climbing very well. He was king of the mountains at the Tour Down Under at the start of this year, and it won't be long before that deficit or gap comes down to under a minute. Haven't seen any action, of course, from the GC riders yet, but I don't think it's going to be too long before we see the likes of AG2R coming towards the front to set a very, very high tempo.
22 seconds off Oran's time when he crosses that line, and that's the way we're looking right now, and here he is. That's a brave performance indeed. Oh, but he's going to ship some more seconds, but is it enough overall? 40, and it's going to be 22, 23 seconds at the maximum. I think it's 20 seconds he has given away today to Quintana. Aru, kind of the sleeper overall. Check this out. Well, he took it to the big guys, didn't he? There we are. Duarte in second place with Quintana in third. Pierre Roland fading to fourth. Rigoberto Urán 42 seconds down on Aru. But Quintana 20 seconds taking back today in his deficit overall. Micah Pellizotti Moreno, Ejidal just crossing the line out in front of Cadel Evans. Minute 13, not too bad. Could have been worse, but probably should have been better.
in compagnia di Nicolas Rocha.
Overall standings look like this. Rigoberto Urán now leads by 1 minute and 3 from Cadel Evans. So, in fact, his lead over the field has enhanced, although some have closed the gap. Quintana is now in 5th place. Aru in 4th. Micah 1 minute and 50 down.